Good morning, guys. How are we doing today?
Morning.
Morning. How you doing? Nice to
Everyone
see you.
else.
Not seen you for a while. It's been at least fucking 20 hours or something, isn't it?
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
These guys are a lot more wide awake than me, I think, today. Yeah, so we've just spent 3 days together, I think.
Indeed.
3 days together on filter inspections, which is a great start to the year.
And a wee condition survey as well thrown in to boot, isn't it?
Yeah, so some conditional survey in Scotland and some filter inspections in Scotland of 4 different filter inspections and 1 conditional survey. So we've come back with some very interesting work, which when we're looking at internal inspections and ultrasonic testing as well of filters. So we thought we'd come back today and just show you some of the things we found, because it was a bit surprising, from filters which were, I think the oldest were 50 years old. Is that right? Something like that.
Nearly as old as you, big guy.
I know. 50 years old, and the newest were less than a year old. So that was interesting. So from the very young to the very, very old.
There was a mix of new filters, old filters, and sand changes that were recent within existing filters. So there was everything to have a wee look at and analyse and assess.
I think different materials as well, wasn't there? So we had steel vessels, we had bobbin wound, we had some GRP as well. So it was an interesting few days.
Sand, 16 to 30 sand, and grade 2 glass.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at grade.
Is that the classification?
We'll leave it at grade 2 glass, because I wouldn't like to say anything else in it.
I know. Well, before we get the lawyer's letter, just stop there, big guy. You know.
Yeah.
I'm going to just make one comment about the glass, and if anyone knows about glass, then this will make them chuckle and laugh. It was lovely kaleidoscope multicolored glass. Yeah. So that might give you a wee idea of the quality and where it's come from. But anyway, moving swiftly on. It was a good 3 days, though.
It was a good 3 days. I've got to say, I really enjoyed the first filter, because the first filter being steel vessel filters, it gives a chance to do a lot of ultrasonic testing. So that was probably one of my preferred favourites to do, actually. I was looking at the first.
What you need to do, Ian, is tell everyone what ultrasonic testing is before they actually think you've got somebody up the duff and you were in hospital getting some testing and some pictures done, you know. So ultrasonic testing isn't checking for a fetus, it's checking for what? Let everyone know.
Okay, so for those of you who have not heard of it before, if you have got a steel vessel filter, in theory, and this is the theory, if you do look after them, the filter vessels can last sort of 75 to 100 years, they estimate, which is it's actually quite interesting, because there's not many leisure centres that actually make it past the sort of 75 years in length. But the vessel's are designed to actually outlast the centre, which is quite interesting. But over a period of time, the vessel internally, well, and for us this week, externally as well, which was interesting, will start to degrade, diminish. And when you build the vessels originally, they're supposed to be between 8 to 10 mil thick. That's the thickness of the vessel, so to speak. But you can use this small piece of equipment called an ultrasonic tester, which will measure the distance or the grade of the metal that's left. And it's actually quite surprising, because the first system we looked at, those 6 steel vessel filters, of which we tested them all, of all which had varying depth, but they were all actually installed at the same time. But the depth grade, I'd say, Richard, probably as much as 2.5 mil difference from good spots to bad spots, so to speak.
I think we recorded as low as 6.5 to as high as almost 10 mil, which was what we determined was probably the original specification. So 50 years later, I think it was 1972, they were installed. Pretty impressive, actually, the condition of the actual steel vessel itself. The media within it, questionable, but the actual steel vessel were in really good condition, and it was really interesting to undertake those tests. And the results of which we found was quite, pleasing, but yeah, it shows that. I think we had the conversation, didn't we? About steel vessels and our preference, and we've all operated facilities as well with steel vessels in them and know how well they perform.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting as well because there is a job which we are looking at down south currently, which is an ongoing job for a refurbishment. And one of the big questions over is vessel thickness. Is can we actually refurbish the current existing vessels? Are they good enough to be done? Which I know is independently being tested now, which I haven't seen the results for yet, but it is being tested. So that was sort of a big eye opener for us, being able to vessel test and see if it was able to potentially refurb if they ever require it in the future.
I think one of the biggest. Go on, Robin. Have you got a question?
I've got a cranking wee photo here, just of on the outer shell of the vessel, just to show what can happen when there's some contamination. And it was a wee hole that's appeared on the back of the filter. I wonder if I can show this for all our YouTube watchers.
Well, while Robin's trying to get that up, it's actually quite interesting because this hole that we discovered, which was external on the vessel, it actually was a bit of pipework which ran sort of towards the ceiling and behind the vessel. And at some point, the pipework had a very small split. And the small split had caused a tiny drip, I'm guessing, over a period of time, which maybe wasn't action for some time. However, it was repaired now, but it caused a large piece of damage on the back of the vessel. But it was interesting because this back piece was right against a wall. So you could only really see it when you actually were on top of the vessel and looking down. And this was one of two, wasn't it? One on this vessel, one another.
Yeah. What I think is pretty interesting, maybe for people that are watching and listening, is that look at the damage that was caused by that contamination, and that just shows you the importance of lining the internals of the filter properly, because it just shows you what can happen to steel when contaminated water actually erodes and corrodes it. And when you're getting your steel filters refurbished, and do you know what? Sometimes when they're 50 years old, they're still worth refurbishing, as we've seen this week. But it has to be done properly, and it has to be lined properly, and it's got to have that glass coating, isn't it, Ian? That we've seen done recently. The glass coating should be on it, and the proper paint should be on it, and then the last 50 years, and that's the internals. That's with corrosive water inside the steel filter. But I mean, if you look at outside the steel filter, that's just a constant drip over God knows how many decades, and look at the damage it's done. Because obviously on the outside of the filter, you're not needing to line it the same as an inside of it. So it just kind of reiterates the importance of looking after the internals of the filter.
I think there's an easy win as well to a point, isn't there, with something like that? If we understand that obviously people's competencies obviously varying in standards, but Richard, if someone had a really simple leak on a piece of pipework like that, or onto a filter that was metal, obviously granted you've got working at heights permission and safe ladders and safe access, just to simply cover the vessel with some plastic, a tarp, some black bags, just something to give it temporary protection whilst you're calling the...
As you've said, the inside of the vessels are designed to be in contact with that water. The outside of the vessels aren't, and people often just don't think of that. And it might have been something that's not visually seen, the damage that's being caused. But if you know of a leak that is a drip that is dripping onto a steel vessel, that's what can happen. And if you can get up there to see it, if not, just take those precautionary measures, because the inside of your vessels might be in great condition, and their lifespan is, as we've seen there, it can exceed 50 years. But if you don't look after those small bits of maintenance, and either stop the leaks in the first place, or at least, as you said, protect the vessels, you're going to potentially cause yourselves quite a costly replacement exercise.
I think the interesting part with that vessel there is the fact it must have been leaking for a period of time. If it was just it started to leak today and you phoned them and the plumbing company was out on Monday and did the fix, I would not be bothered about plastic over the thing. But the vessel itself, I mean, the damage was so bad, we couldn't get a very clear reading as to the thickness of the metal at that point. We could only really go around it because the way the ultrasonic tester works is it needs a solid piece of matter to be able to measure through. So we were probably, 30 mil away from the actual main damage before we could get readings on it. And even then, that was quite bad. But we couldn't actually get a test on the thickness. But to be fair, with the picture that Robin showed there, you can get them patch repaired. You know, it's possible. Certainly it's possible to get them patch repaired. But as I say, that was really strange because it was just 2 vessels, wasn't it, that showed that damage, which was only really visible from above, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. I wonder if the maintenance guys actually knew that damage was there, because it was really, really difficult to get to see that. Even when we were up on top of the filter, you still had to go round the back to witness that. So, you know,
but as you say, Robin, that's been caused by, you know, years, if not decades of leak. You know, when those vessels have been you know, media changed, it should have been picked up. Hopefully, you would have liked to have thought, but it is just a note just to remember. You know, it's not just the inside of the vessel. Also, you know, you can get damage and you can get, you know, corrosion on the outside of the vessels much easier, and that can lead to, you know, quite expensive refurbishments.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
are we going to have a little look inside the vessel in terms of the media? And we've already sort of had some discussions about the various media that we had, but one of the interesting things that we found was the condition of the beds, and what we sort of pointed that to. I mean, you can see there, Robin's putting on a picture. If we just look at the bed first before we talk about the corrosion. And what we found on a number of vessels was quite uneven beds, channeling occurring. And just sort of when we started to explore the operational procedures, in particularly the backwashing procedures, that was quite an interesting note. And in some cases, in some ways, it wasn't necessarily operator fault, but almost the ability of the site to discharge water that was limiting their backwash ability.
There's certainly quite a few things to note about the bed. I mean, before, as you say, we're looking at condition of the bed, but just simply a really simple task is bed measurement, isn't it, guys? You know, simply measuring from the top of the filter to the top of the bed, and then measuring the side of the bed to where it's going to be to give you an estimated measurement. So hopefully, you know, this year Richard's got a measurement of X, and next year he takes another measurement, and hopefully the measurement is approximately the same. You may lose a little bit of the bed, but as you stated quite rightly there, the condition of the bed's not great. It's not even. It's pretty heavily marked. It's not sitting well. It's interesting that this was probably the worst steel vessel filter as far as corrosion on the manway into the bed, which was quite interesting as well.
Which I think is an area where you get more air build up as well there in the hatchery, which is going to lead to more corrosion. So I think that's why that area specifically was very bad. But on one of the filters, when we inspected internally, you really had to get in and have a look that we had quite a bad issue with regards to the deflector plate, and one of the sort of the arm supports had almost corroded away. So the plate was unevenly situated, which would mean that flow and channeling would specifically be directed to one side of the bed. So that, you know, it's important as well that when you do have media change, that obviously all these things are checked and ensured that they are working as they're designed to do so.
I'm just thinking, Richard, as well, if anyone's a bit unsure when it comes to the deflector plate, you know, for those of you, the way I always like to describe it as a rough is just an upside down umbrella in a way, so to speak. So it's almost just pushing the water up to the top of the vessel, to try and give it an even distribution across the whole of the vessel. That's probably my easiest way of describing it. But as you say, the bed can be, it can massively change depending on what it is.
Yeah, you tilt your umbrella to one side, and water's going to run off off that one side predominantly, isn't it? So, and that's what we feel we found on one of the vessels, and one of the interesting things that we found was when we started to explore the backwash rates, actually they were having to throttle off or reduce because of they were flooding the plant room. And I think that's a really important thing that we find in a lot of facilities, is the ability of either the attenuation tank and the size of it, or the ability of the waste drains to what flow rates they can handle. And in this instance, it was interesting because that building was built in 1972, and we look out the window from that plant room and we see quite, buildings that have been built since then, probably in the last 20 years, blocks of apartments. And I think it's interesting to sometimes consider the fact that when it was built, I'm sure the discharge rates were perfectly suitable for backwashing those filters. But have we then got a number of accommodation, domestic and industrial, that are then discharging into the same waste pipes further down the lines, that are meaning the discharge rates are reduced? That was an interesting thing. They were really hindered by something out of their control in a way, and that was an interesting fact that was leading to maybe not as optimal filtration as they could be achieving.
I think it's key as well, isn't it, that when you think about your backwash rate, and this is where some places go wrong, and we did find one instance of this, that your backwash rate is faster than your filtration rate.
Definitely.
Because you have to lift the bed. When we're looking at backwashing, a lot of the time we don't want to do more than 25 meters cube per meter square through the bed to keep it as a medium rate filter. But ideally we want to be lifting at least 35 meters cubed going the reverse way through the backwash. So we have to lift and move the bed up, so to speak, to be able to agitate it. Sorry, Rob, what were you going to say, mate?
No, I was just going to go back to Richard's point about the discharge and the changes surrounding that particular facility and building. It can have a big factor and contribution in terms of the life expectancy of the facility. So it's a major factor when it comes to the things that are uncontrollable and in and around your particular facility. If you've got 100 houses that have just popped up beside you over 2 decades, then that's going to have a big impact on sewage rates, discharge rates, capacities, and all of that. And that can be a big influence on the longevity of your site. So if you're looking to keep the site open for another 10, 20 years, or knock it down and build a new one, that can be a big contributing factor. I mean, that's discussions that a lot of places are having just now, about whether they keep their facility or whether they look to try and build a new one. So, but yeah, one thing we need to highlight, and because we've done our usual and got ahead of ourselves and got quite technical, I'm just going to share something just with the listeners and the viewers, and that is the purpose of why we were there in the first place. And that is that hopefully this comes up. It should share now. There's the PewTag Code of Practice. Section 5.3 maintenance. Filters should be opened up and inspected internally at least once a year by someone familiar with the sort of problems that can appear. This is something that those who are managing facilities, whether they're maintenance guys, whether they're duty managers, whether they're general managers, whatever your role is within the site, if this is your responsibility in terms of maintaining and complying with best practice, then what we perform this week is something that every site should be performing annually, and it does determine whether you need to perform additional maintenance, maybe even a sand change, or so on, or much like what we encountered in terms of some corrosion that needed some repair. Sometimes these annual inspection reports are great because they tell you, like we found this year, this visit as well, that it tells you good things. I mean, there was one of the visits that we had where we opened up the filter and we were like, right, that's really good. Look at that, really even bed, and no channeling, no mud balling, and it shows a real positive. as well as looking for the negatives. So it's just to remind the listeners and the viewers, by the way, there's a purpose to what we were doing this week, and it's not just the site that decided that, oh, we're going to inspect our filters this year. No, it should be done every year by everybody.
Do you know the ironic thing, which is quite funny, because I know us three can share this, but it was actually Site 2 I actually quite liked, because Site 2 was basically Site 2 is going to be replaced with a brand new build, which is fantastic, great news, fantastic. How can I say, a fantastic facilities for swimming in Scotland and for the area, and to provide great facilities for kids and for the patrons of that particular town, which is fantastic. But what I wanted to share with the guys, because I thought it was just a little bit different, which you guys can see, this was this, if you remember this.
Yeah.
and of the filters, and this is quite interesting. So of the 4 sites we went to, and all of which were using the same disinfectant, calcium hypochlorite, this was the only one that actually had deposits inside the filter vessels, which we've taken out. And the bigger one, which if anyone's watching this on YouTube, you see in the picture there, it's probably about half the size of your fist, I would have said, maybe slightly smaller, to be honest. Probably a little bit smaller than a tennis ball would be probably about the right size. But having calcium sulfate deposits inside the filter, which I just thought that was interesting. I'd never seen that before. And I think that's quite good in the way that this is, I've said it a few times, this is year 30 of me being in swimming pools. My God, year 30. And it's the first time I've ever seen that.
We're still debating it. I still think there's elements of calcium chloride flake, possibly. I think the coagulant has started that process.
Yeah.
And then it's just a build-up of calcium and calcium chloride flake, along with, other, the disinfectant as well. So, but it's just interesting to see that. We didn't see it anywhere else. The filters at this particular site were actually in good nick. But you just come up with things.
I think they were in the best condition, Rob.
Yeah, they were. But hey, so maybe everybody needs these contaminants. Maybe they're purposefully helping.
Do you know what might be quite funny? We've maybe ruined those filters, because we found 2 in one and 2 in the other, but we took them all out. So we've maybe ruined the filter capacity now.
Ian's got them on his mantelpiece.
No, not bad.
Yeah, he's got them as a wee reward, a wee reminder, bit of sentimentality. But yeah,
on a serious note, I mean, this is just one for variance, isn't it, really? So the first vessels we opened up were steel vessel filters, and this second set were a set of Astral filters. And I don't know about you, Richard, but I felt these were much easier to open.
I think they all have their complications, or can have their complications, if they're well maintained, if they're opened, as you said, on their internal inspection on a regular basis. If they're looked after, there shouldn't be no issues. We did find one that had been not as well maintained in terms of its access point, and that was a lot more difficult. But yeah, I think there's different. Obviously, these are much easier because they are sort of one fitting almost to remove, rather than 24 mil bolts to remove from the lid. But no, they were all really interesting actually to get open, to get inside. And as we said, you could link as well the conditions of the filters as well back to what we always say, the operation and the people that use the pool. The one facility maybe that had very good filter beds, was its usage was much lower than the other sites. It didn't have issues with discharge rates into drains and things like that. So it does come back to a little bit of, as we always say, the swimmer and the user, has a big impact on the condition, and the pollution loading and the way in which you operate as well is fundamental. And if we I just wanted to cover off that point that we talked about on the discharge rates and drainage. We pick it up on building new facilities, and we put appropriate attenuation tanks in. But if you are an existing pool and there is a housing estate being built next to you, they will have no consideration to your drainage rates. So it's important that you try and pick that up and highlight it somewhere through their public consultation planning process, or get in touch with us, and we'll likewise try and do that on your behalf in some way. Because I do think it is a critical point that we're seeing, where we've got older facilities and newer developments being built around them that are then causing issues to the ability to discharge.
Yeah, I think as well.
On you go, Ian. On you go.
No,
I
go
think
on.
it was a good project, because we weren't just asked to look at the condition of the filters. We were asked to tie it in with a holistic, an overall objective to have a look at the actual building and other parts of the building and the condition of the whole plant room. So it was interesting to see how that fits in with the rest of the building as well. So it was a really good exercise from our perspective to get a picture, to see a picture of where a building is in terms of its journey, its lifespan, and to be asked, well, how long do you think we can keep this going? So it was, from our learning and our perspective, it was a very, very good exercise to have a look at not just the filtration aspect, but the holistic aspect of it. I found that very, very interesting in terms of assessing, by the way, this building's been here for X amount of years, a long time. Do you think we can keep it going? What's the prospects? And obviously quantifying that was, using the ultrasonic testing and other aspects. And obviously we've taken a lot of evidence and done a lot of investigating, and I found that very, very interesting, because you can relate it to other sites as well, can't you?
There's a wider issue as well, the whole thing, which is, towards the end, guys, because although going back to what Robin says, yeah, get them inspected, fantastic, make sure someone knows what they're doing who does it, but getting them back online is just as complex as getting them inspected in a long way. It's not a simple task, is it, by any means, just throwing the system back online, because it takes a lot longer than what you think.
It's about patience, isn't it? Very much so. I think that's one of the things that you have to apply throughout. You can't just ramp it back up, and you've got to be very, very careful in the way in which you repressurize these vessels, which is, if anyone is doing any internal inspections themselves on their own filters, that's probably one of the key critical things is patience. Do not rush the process.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Just being able to slowly build the system back up. And to be honest, well, as you said, Richard, it's being patient. So, think you're going to do it with X amount of time, but in actual fact, do it even longer than what you'd presume, because it depends on the vessel itself. But I certainly enjoyed the process. Some of us got a little bit dirtier than others, didn't we, Richard?
Oh, we did indeed, yes.
Some of us will be doing the job properly right to the end, instead of just doing it like a hobby and thinking, I'll twist off the bolts and have a look in. Who's going to actually do the work and present it to the customer? I'll tell you what, I'll hand it over to you if you want. Yeah? And I'll go back and just twist the bolts off. Yeah?
He turned up with his big his rugger boots on the second day.
I've done both. You have done. He likes to be the front guy. I'll go up and top the filler. I'm the man. But see, when it comes to giving the customer what he wants, see, Robin, you better get your finger out, because I'm not doing it.
It's only because we couldn't understand them, Robin.
Behind the scenes is where it's at. That's where the value is.
Let's not forget the debate between link sausage and long sausage.
That must have been the highlight of your week.
That's the highlight of the trip. That.
No. Come on. I actually think it was probably supper.
He's ordered a fish supper, and can I get chips with that? Pardon? You want an extra portion of chips? No, I just want chips from my fish. No, big man. It comes with chips.
I hope you've spoken to Grace about that, Richard, because I think that's hilarious.
Yes.
But go on, Rob.
The Lord sauce. I cannot believe We went into a proper roll shop, and you two boys said, "Can I have 2 rolls and link?" And I'm surprised they had link sausages, because that's just not a thing. I mean, I said to them, "Can I have a roll and sausage?" Because that's what I had. You had something that's a bit links. What's that all about?
You wanted
So
to
at least,
yeah, leave us then, didn't you? That was it, yeah.
that was it. I was done by that point. That was and Stevie, yeah. Stevie doesn't have long sausage. He goes with steak. Mine. And Stevie, hats off to you, big guy, for holding the ladder for the last few days as well. Well done to Stevie, if he's listening. So
I think as well, guys, just before
good lad.
Before,
He was a good lad.
Definitely.
Where we got the filters done, obviously with our one final job, which was to look at energy of a large centre in Scotland. Very, very large centre in Scotland, to be fair. Which is interesting, shall we say. Trying to model.
It's an old facility as well, Ian. That's the thing. It's an old facility, very, very busy. So it's a good project for us to get our teeth into, isn't it?
Yeah. No heat recovery.
No heat recovery. Yeah. Pool cover doesn't work.
80% humidity.
Yeah. Plus. Yeah. Yeah. No, it'll be interesting. But I tell you what about this? OLM, busy as big projects. Word's getting about that the Three Musketeers are out there and their services are on offer. So yeah, to the listeners and the viewers, give us a shout, give us a bell if you need any assistance, or if you're, in fact, can they go onto the website, Ian? Is that?
It's I'd say it's 90% live. There's a couple of pages that are a bit missing, but it's 90% live. Yeah, it's there.
You'll get our contact details off there anyway. So Facebook page, honestly, we will try our best to update you with more stuff on the Facebook page, OLM Consulting Facebook page, and we'll try and put that on the Swimming Pool Network page as well at the same time. Mary has asked me to try and do boomerangs. I thought that was, I'm sorry, I'm no into that kinky stuff, but apparently that's just a video that you put online for Facebook. So I need to start doing that. So boomerangs, I think it's like a wee 3-second video or something. So we'll try and do these things. We've got lots of plans. If the viewers and listeners want us to provide more, send us. Comment on stuff. Just say, listen, can we see a wee bit more of this, a wee bit more of that? Or just tell us to get to if you don't like it. That's fine. So it's a bit cathartic for us at times, just putting stuff up just to remind us where we've been. So yeah, hopefully customers are happy and many more subscribe and many more phone us up and ask us to do some projects for them too. Sales pitch over.
You sure?
We didn't even say Happy New Year either, by the way, at the start.
It's a long distance memory, isn't it? It's a long distance memory already, especially since you've had a long sausage since then.
Well, listen, guys, I think that's for us for this week. So this is first podcast of this new year. So I think this is 31. I think. I'm not too sure. We'll have to wait and see. It's round about that, 30 or 31. And get it edited and get it sent out there. But yeah, certainly, guys, if you've got anything to ask us now, the new company's formed. We're all good to go. And a lot bigger, a lot brighter, a lot quicker. And hopefully it'll be all good.
We're a lot more suave now that we've got Richard Lamborn here. We've gone up in the world. Yeah.
Robin, I think it's half their average age.
Yes, aye. So you keep slagging me off for being rough and ready. So we've had to add a bit of class. Is that right?
I don't know about that, but it's very nice of you.
Saying that he's a Brummie, so I don't know. He's Birmingham, so that's still dodgy,
It's the first time someone from my neck of the woods has been called a bit of class.
well, no mention your football team either,
Yeah.
Villains and all that,
Let's not go there.
Very good,
so-
guys.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.